I'm Phil Lowe from the Information Lab, one of the account managers here. I'm joined with a colleague, Vikash, who's going to take through a product demo. But welcome all. I hope you're all doing well and having a good day so far. Today, I'm going to run you through a webinar, which is all about data preparation and essentially looking into ways how your business can save time, resources, and money by understanding how data preparation works and where it might be useful. So we're going to cover how this is done, why it's useful, and particularly focus on a couple of solutions that we're experienced using, which is Tableau Prep and Alteryx, and how those actually work. So just to introduce this webinar, a couple of quotes here that I thought are quite nice at kind of highlighting the importance of preparation and particularly data prep. So getting data into the hands of people who will know exactly what to do with it starts with building sensible workflows. So that highlights the need to actually give data to the business, give data to the users. But if you're giving them data that's not usable, if you're giving them data that they can't understand, if you're giving them data that they're not able to actually interrogate and tell a picture, tell a story with, then it's kind of useless. You're better off not giving them data at all. And so you've always got to start off with these sensible workflows of thinking, which bits of data do they actually need? Which bits of data do they need in what format? How is it going to be easy for that end user to actually understand and use? Because really, what we want to move towards is kind of self-service analytics and people being able to actually use their data easily, ask questions of it, and get the answers in an efficient format. Another quote, discovering the crucial facts and most valuable insights is a collaborative process. So you can't expect one person to know all the answers. You've got to be able to actually collaborate. And these solutions that we're going to present later on are very good at doing that, very good at being able to be handed over. There's no kind of mystery in what the data preparation has been done. There's no coding. It's not hidden under lots of layers of code. It's very easy and clear to understand exactly what somebody's done in that process to clean up that data. So if there's something wrong with it, you can make changes. If there's any errors coming out, you can see what those are. So that's kind of a couple of things to formulate what we're discussing in this session. So why do you want to do data prep? You may have seen a screen like this before. It may look very scary to you. It certainly looks very scary to me. But effectively, this is how a schema used to look, of where you're actually joining different tables together. Things have moved along quite a bit since this sort of way of doing things, but you can kind of see how these things are connected, what's joining with what, which fields joining to which. But if you handed this over to someone, it's not that easy really and clear to understand. So we want to go from a logical process of taking certain bits of data and bringing them together, but in that logic, actually present it in a way that's really easy to consume and for anybody to be able to understand what's actually gone on. And the reason that's so important is, as I was mentioning, you want to be able to collaborate. Somebody might know something about a data set that they can input themselves, and they can actually add some additional kind of context to this cleaning process and this preparation. So what this looks like nowadays is a lot more of a kind of easier to digest, nicer icons. You can add annotations, you understand what the data source is coming from, what each tool is going to do to the data, and it's a bit easier to follow along. As we'll see in the product demos, it's very easy to really understand the flow and how the data's transmitting through this flow diagram, as opposed to it just being a bit of a mysterious process that might be coded or just only certain people would understand how it's actually made. So there's a few key things here that I've written of why you really want to do this and what scenarios that would come about where data preparation is essential. So anything where there's a repeatable task. These workflows and these solutions, once you've built out that process, you can just repeat that same workflow again and again. It doesn't need to be changed. You can run it through a new set of data with the same kind of logic, and it will output the data exactly how you want it. So anything where there's a manual task, someone's having to go into an Excel spreadsheet, run a model, run a macro, pivot that data and get an output, you could build that into a workflow that would solve that issue. Any place where you need to combine multiple sources. So if there's data locked away in some SQL table, in some legacy systems, maybe an online data source, you'd have to do those manually, copying and pasting from data sets into different spreadsheets. Effectively, what you want to be able to do there is really just connect to those source systems, build through one of these workflows, and that kind of resolves the issue. It brings all these data into one place. Some new data sources that you've never been able to access before. If there's APIs that you're looking to connect to, if APIs are a bit more of an efficient way of getting your data, you might not be able to do that with the current setup that you've got. These solutions present ways that you can do that. One of the key things really of why you want to do this is to prevent errors. The issue with something like Excel is that it's inherently going to be fraught with some manual processing errors. You may have done it with calculations before, you put a parentheses in the wrong place and the calculation is incorrect. If you delete certain rows, those rows won't then be included in totals. There's certain things that are very easy to do and very difficult to know that they've happened, that you want to kind of get away from. If you've deleted rows or columns in an Excel file and give that to a colleague, that colleague has no idea that that's even happened, and so will be presenting inaccurate results. These solutions show very clearly how each tool is changing the data, and it's very easy to see where there might be manual errors or there's something that might have gone wrong there. And if this data processing does change slightly, it should be easier to update, and it should be easy for someone to hand over the work to somebody else. So the ways that these software are designed, it's easy. You can add annotations and comments that it's easy to understand what's kind of going on. And someone else should be able to kind of pick up that work and kind of run with it, even if they're not the person that's actually designed that logic in the first place. So I've got a couple of use cases here just to kind of showcase the power of data preparation and how it can really kind of change what goes on in a business. So we did some work with one of the top 4 consultancies, and there's a team that was kind of stuck in this process of just getting data from spreadsheets, multiple tabs. You've seen those spreadsheets before, different tab for a different company, and lots of information kind of contained in kind of a few layers within those spreadsheets. So a lot of copying and pasting, maybe a few nice VLOOKUPs, that sort of classic problem. And then you're presenting those tables in kind of different visualizations in PowerPoint. That's a lot of manual work. I've done this work previously in a previous life at my company before this, where we had a survey that ran every quarter. The company, our client gave us the data, and every quarter we'd have to run through a 2-week process of, doing lots of different pivot tables, extracting the data from the different tabs, creating visuals, and then updating a slide deck. 2 weeks of work for about a 2 or 3 person team. That's a lot of kind of man hours. We actually brought in Alteryx there, and in a similar way to this specific use case, building out that actual workflow to take those data in a standardized way, input it all as a massive dump of data, and reshape it so that it's in a good format for a visualization tool is a much more efficient way. And then every time you get a new data set or a new wave of a survey, whatever it might be, you can just rerun that workflow, and it kind of takes away that whole kind of those man hours of manual manipulation. So the other kind of addition to this was actually the graphical options as well in Excel were quite limited to how it processed the data. The data needs to be in a specific structure for that to happen. If you just present the raw data to a visualization software, say like Tableau or Qlik, that's going to be a better way to kind of use your data. So really Alteryx helps just clean that data into a usable format and a repeatable process that can be automated and run each time this data set needed to be processed. Another use case from a media consultancy, and this is where there's actually lots of different types of data. So there's some online platforms, some APIs, secure file location that needed to have data downloaded from it. So lots of moving pieces that really would have taken a lot of manual work of someone sitting, going through a lot of different systems, getting the manual data, and then trying to combine them in some way. Alteryx was able to connect all of those different streams with different tools, input tools, and then output that data in one nice table, in one nice view in SQL Server. And then Tableau or any other BI tool was able to actually access that. And so it's really got rid of all of that manual part of actually bringing data together. And so you can spend more time actually understanding the data in a visualization software. So what are we going to talk about in this, and what tools should you be using? Well, there's a couple that we use. We're partners with Tableau and Alteryx. Tableau has a data preparation software, Tableau Prep Builder, and Alteryx is also a solution. We'll have a look at the two different approaches. We'll have a look at how the two different software look now. And then we'll go through some of the kind of pros and cons, and then kind of finish with some of the pricing information about the different tools. So over to Vikash for the demo.
Thank you, Phil. Can you see that?
Yep.
Should be fine. Okay. So the schedule for the demo is I'll give a software overview, and then I'll walk through Tableau Prep and Alteryx. Just some information about myself. My name is Vikash. I'm an Alteryx and Tableau consultant at the Information Lab, part of Data School Cohort 19. So you can see data prep, well, you can use the analogy of climbing the data prep mountain to kind of understand what different levels of data prep are. So we can see it in 3 stages. The first can be quite straightforward. It could be walking along, which is understood by most people. And then the second part of climbing a mountain could be requiring more tools. So we need a walking stick in this instance, and maybe some more advanced clothing. And then the third stage could be actual climbing. So you need a harness, rope, and you need quite a lot of specialized expertise to go forth and do that. And this could be a good analogy for data prep. So you can see in 3 stages. The first could be something which could be done in Excel, like filtering, cleaning, and combining. The second would be advanced cleaning, moving on to scheduling and outputting to databases. And the third, the more advanced side, could be geospatial analysis or manipulation using predictive analysis or even machine learning. So I think this is quite a good introduction to understand what we're looking at. So you could use Excel for the first stage, and then Tableau Prep maybe for the second, and then Alteryx would have the advanced capabilities to go forward for the third. So now let's go through a walkthrough. So we'll start off with Tableau Prep. So when you open the software, this is the landing page you get up to. And you can see I've got some previous flows which I've worked on in the middle. And what's quite handy with this, as with Tableau, is on the right-hand side, you have a Discover page where you can see training and different learning videos, and resources are there in the bottom as well. And for this demo now, I'll quickly join 2 pieces of data which are available from Tableau. It's a sample supersort data set to show how quickly and easy this goes. And so you get a hands-on view of what the software looks like. So to start off, we'll click Connect to Data. And then I'll select text file over here. So you can select the different source of file. And also in Tableau Prep and in Alteryx, you can connect to different servers. I'll show that again. Different servers, or there's lots and lots of different ways you can, methods of connecting your data, as you can see. So just for this example, I'll use text files, and I've got them here. So sample supersort orders and returns. I'll select both to open, and I'll just add them in. And now we're actually in Tableau Prep. So this is what the software looks like. And what you can see is we have this white space in the center, which is like a canvas. And this is where the flow really takes place. So we've got both of our inputs over here, as you can see. And what we want to do with this is join them. But before that, we can look at what is shown when you look at the data. You can see a summary of what's there, which just shows the columns of each data set, and some information about the sort of files you can see. This is a CSV file. you can, it shows it's a text file here. You can edit the file location or the file, and you can, you can do a few things in here. So to join these two, it's quite simple. This is drag and drop software predominantly. You can click on one of them and just drag it on top of the other, and it will give two options to either join or union. And from here, we can just drag that on top of the join, and it will join the two data sets. And as you can see, these two are being joined on order ID. So the structure of the data, if we wanted to see, we can click on the Superstore. This shows a long list of the columns, and the common columns in both are order ID. So this gives shipping information for a sample Superstore with the price, the category, the product ID, whilst this spreadsheet over here, this CSV file, only has two columns, the order ID and if it was returned or not. So you can see that this was quite straightforward to join. If we click on the join, from here, we can decide the type of join that we want to do. So if you only wanted to see the orders that were returned, it would be an inner join, or you can choose a left or right, or even an entire join if you wanted to. And it gives a summary of the join results in a similar structure to Tableau, if you can recognize it. And if we go and look at the join results, it also gives a summary of the data here, the row ID, the order ID, the order date, for example, the ship date, in a similar structure to Tableau. So you can see if it's banded up or if it's done by category, how this information is laid out. So for example, if you wanted to look at the orders which were returned, these all show up now. And if we wanted to filter it further down by ship mode, we can do that now. So I'll quickly show you how to do that. So in ship mode, there are a few different ways. There's using filtered values over here. We could create a calculated field. That's something similar if you recognize from Tableau. Or from this pane, if we click here, and we can click the filter button, filter by a calculation, ship mode, and we can do this if ship mode equals first class. And apply. And now at this stage in the data prep, it only shows the returned items which have the ship mode first class. And from here, you can click the plus to do a few other things. So you can either clean it, aggregate the data, pivot, join it again, create a union script, or output it into an external file. So if you wanted to do this in Excel, you might need some VLOOKUPs or something a bit more advanced. But doing this in this sort of software, it's very quick. So you can see that we've joined it and we've filtered it by ship mode, and we're ready to output the data. So now I'll do a demonstration in Alteryx. I'll show you the same thing. So if you go to Alteryx, you can see the format of Alteryx and the structure of the page is slightly different. So we have a ribbon at the top with the tools. So we've got lots of different types, in and out, preparation. And if you look through, you can see there are a few more. So we've got in-database tools. We've got spatial tools, predictive tools as well. And then even further across, developer, behavioral analysis. And depending on the sort of pack you have with Alteryx, you can go into machine learning, text mining, and a lot more further, more advanced data manipulation tools. So let's recreate what we did before. So for that, we go to our text input in and out, and we can input data over here. Choose the file. So I'll go to Files, there it is, select the file, Orders, open that. And I'll do the same for the other one. So I'll go to Input Data, drag this is another drag and drop. And then in here, connect to File and Database over here, find the file path, select Files, select Files over here. You can see there's a lot more different types of data that you can bring in from here. Select File. And I'll select returns. Okay. And I'd want to do the same thing as before. So I want to join the two data sets up. And to do this, we have to select the tools in the ribbon above. So I want to find the join tool, which is in this. It's a purple tool. Drag and drop the join into here, and then that's automatically connected to one, the left-hand side. If we want to do the same for this, we can connect that to there. And we want to define what the two tables are being joined on, and that's the order ID. So in the configuration pane over here, we've got joined by specific fields on the left-hand side. We want order ID, and it's the same. It automatically shows because it comes in there. And you may notice that there are three output arrows over here. You've got left, J, and R. These designate the sort of join or the sort of data that comes through. So if it's a left join or the information that just comes through from the left, as designated over here, left unjoined, the J stands for the inner join and the R goes for R. The right unjoined, that's what comes through here. So let's run the workflow. So go to the right-hand side, click run. And then if you click the inner join, you can see, okay, all of the data has been joined here. And these are the orders which have been returned. And if we wanted to look at the left join, you can see these are the orders that haven't been returned. And then if we go to the right, we can see there's nothing there because all of the orders in the return column have a corresponding order ID. So to do the same thing as we did before, which is filter the data, we can go to the preparation ribbon, click here, and select filter. So I want to do that from the main. And what I want to do is create a basic filter over here, select column. So we've got ship mode equals, and then up to first class. And I'll select run. And what this has is two outputs. It's got the T and the F. True, T stands for true, and F is false. So at the top here, we can see for the ship mode being first class after this join, when it's true, this is the data that's output. And we can see over here in the ship mode column, that's the case. And for the false, this would be everything that's not output in the top. So you can see ship mode is standard class or otherwise second class pops up there. And from here, we can either browse and view the data, or we can output it. So you can use the output tool. I won't do it now because I have to designate where it saves to, but that's how you essentially create the same workflow. Now, as I mentioned before in the presentation, that there are different levels of complexity with each software. So now I'll run through a more advanced example in Alteryx, something that I've made earlier. So don't worry if this looks quite scary to start off with. I'm just going to walk through it. So the problem that we're faced here is we want to clean the financial data for analysis, and group the transactions into categories. To start off, I'll show you what the data looks like. So if we look over here, you can see we've got this. So it's one column of information, and it has all of the data or a lot of different things happening each one. So you can see there's a date, then there's a transaction type, then there looks to be something like an amount, then there's spaces, and then something else over here, and then something at the end. And you can see in the top column here, it says completed date, description, paid out, paid in, exchange out, exchange in, balance, and so forth. So if you wanted to use this for analysis, you wouldn't really know how to do this, especially in Excel. It'd be a lot of breaking this up and then understanding what happens. And as Phil mentioned before, if this came from a survey, for example, it could be something that you needed to do time and time again, maybe quarterly, for example. And if there was a way to automate this, so to speak, then that would save a lot of man hours. So just to mention that this could come from a live connection as well, and you can schedule how much this refreshes. Or it could come from a database or an API. But for this demo, I've just decided to have a standard file to make it, to make sure everything works smoothly. So we start off by importing the data. Everything looks like this. And we've got two objectives: to clean it all up and create categories for it. So the first step that we do is split it into columns. As we can see in here, I'm not sure if you'll see, it seems like there's a semicolon in between each piece of information. So what we do is we split it into columns firstly, which takes the data up. So you can see there's still a lot of
I think Vikash is frozen. Other people might be seeing this as well. I'll try and continue kind of explaining what he was going through. It might be an internet issue. So until the screen kind of blanks out, okay, yeah, this screen's gone now. He must have lost connection. I'll kind of, yeah, just go back to, go back to my original presentation. So Vikash showed a couple of different ways of doing some simple data processing with a more kind of advanced example of taking a really quite unstructured data set. So that's can be a specific use case if you're really getting data that isn't that clean. I've even seen people get data from PDFs. So if there's any kind of tabular information in PDFs, but usually it doesn't come out in a nice format. You could build that kind of data parsing as a concept of actually getting data from different strings of data or something from a PDF and actually processing that. So hopefully it gives you kind of a little flavor of how you can use the two different software to look into kind of preparing your information. Vikash might join back, so if he does, then I'll get him to finish his bit of the demo. But I'll kind of move on from where I was.
I think my internet cut out. I'm back.
That's all right. Like me to. Yeah, sure. Yeah, if you'd like to just finish it off, that'd be great.
I'm sorry about that. So
no, that's all right. It's remote working
from home. Yeah. Okay, hopefully you can see this again, and I'll just run through maybe a little bit faster just in case everything goes wrong. So the purpose of this now was to summarize the transactions to see the descriptions and output this so that you're able to look at this list of transactions and say, okay, this looks like it's from this sort of category and this sort of category. So this was taken off and summarized here as a list of vendors essentially, and then the category was done manually, or it could be done in another system or something else to show the category. So it could be eating out or clothing or entertainment, something like that. This is just a random, or Aldi comes up in there. That comes under the category groceries. Now this we want to join back on. So we have this new updated category on the rest of the data set. So this was just cleaned and then labeled again so that the headers matched. But now let's go back to the main data flow. What I wanted to do was just make sure that all of the transactions were domestic. So I used regex to just find out if the transactions were international by looking for a certain character in one of the columns and highlighting it as an international transaction or not. And then filtering these out. So if the international transaction is false, then we show it or we continue with it, or if it is indeed an international transaction, we don't want to look at it right now. So as I showed before, we used this join tool to connect these two data sets. And this join was done on description. So all this does now is you have the original data set, and at the end of it, we have a new column of, like it says, right category over here. This is the new category of where it actually came from. And you can see in the configuration way, you can update the names from here to anything else if you wanted to rename or just make everything a bit clearer. And then after this, use the select tool to select and isolate relevant columns only, then another filter tool to only show the sort of transactions that I would want to output, and then do two things here. So you can see I've done the same thing. I've split out into two different outputs. The first, I wanted to do a summary by category. So I used the summary tool, and you can see down here, we've got the category and the sum paid out by summary. So we've got cash, clothing, coffee, eating out, entertainment, and you've got the total sum of everything that's come out from there. Miscellaneous shopping, transport, or unknown. And we've got another output. So this is output into a CSV file. And another output over here, which gives the date, the category, the description, paid out, and the running balance. So you can see with not that many tools from this workflow, I can zoom out a little bit, we've gone from what was a very messy single column to something that's quite clean and multiple outputs depending on what you'd like to actually output. One showing just a summary of what it was, so by category, a total, or a more granular or list, table, which could be used for analysis in many, many different ways. But these are essentially very clean outputs. So just to summarize, if I can find my presentation. Yeah, there we go. Just to recap, we looked at Tableau Prep and Alteryx. Tableau Prep is a similar interface to Tableau. If you're familiar with Tableau, it might be quite straightforward to see how it works or understand how the calculations go at least. It's more intuitive for first-time users, and it can be seen as the I never needed data prep tool. I think it's important to mention as well that Tableau Prep is a product that's only a few years old, as opposed to Alteryx is over 10 years old now. So they've had a lot more opportunity for develop in Alteryx. And Alteryx is a more advanced analytical tool with a much more broader range of functionality, which can be seen as a power users tool. So to take it back to the original analogy we looked at, for intermediate or for some sort of more advanced functionality, as opposed to just looking at it in Excel, Tableau Prep may be the solution. But when you want to look into more advanced, more configurable solutions, then Alteryx may be the tool for you. And that's everything. Thank you very much. And I'll pass it back to Phil. Thank you.
Thanks, Vikas. That's great. Glad to have you back. So hopefully also one of the things that you're able to see with that second workflow in Alteryx is really how clear you can make what the process is with the annotations, with color coding, and really actually describe a process. So I've worked at a few companies where they're really keen to get this kind of documentation and data dictionary and really be quite key on making sure every step's been written down. And that can be useful to have a secondary document for that. But I think what Alteryx is able to do is just get away from the need to do additional documentation where actually within the process itself, you're adding annotation, and maybe one of those files needs changing or updating regularly. You can kind of put a red flag and say this file needs to be updated monthly. And just it kind of brings a user into the process. Instead of having to kind of update documentation and then kind of repeat another process and change things, it's actually in the data process itself that you're making those updates. So I'm just going to kind of go through a bit of a recap again, like Vikas did, but with some specific use cases and specific attributes of the two tools. And specifically maybe why you'd want one over the other before kind of running through the pricing. So Tableau Prep can connect to local files, your Excels, your CSVs, and connects to databases as well. As you saw, it's still that visual workflow design. It's familiar if you're using Tableau. And to make those changes, you can kind of step through the logical process. So it doesn't build the same sort of flow diagram as Alteryx, but you can kind of step through any changes that have been made. One important thing to note is that it's included with a creator license. So if you have any creators roles in your business, then they will have access to Tableau Prep and you can start using it right away. I know that sometimes I speak to people and they kind of hear of Tableau Prep and like, how do I get a license for that? You've actually got it included with your creator license. So you can actually start using it today if you're a creator license owner. I've kind of written here, it's best for local data processing. And that's because kind of we've seen from different kind of colleagues using it that at scale and, processing larger data sets, it can be a bit cumbersome in Tableau Prep. And that's because of the way that it actually runs the data through. So as you're building out that flow, as you're adding a filter, as you're adding a calculation, as you're, adding some logic in there, it actually runs the data each step you do. So if you've got 10 million rows, it's going to run those in memory every kind of step that you process. In Alteryx, you could actually build those ahead of time. So you can build all the steps out and then run the workflow. And so just from a user experience, it can be a bit neater. The only way to kind of get around that is maybe use a subset of the data and just sample it to a few rows. So there's kind of ways of getting around it. But at scale, I think Tableau Prep kind of just falls over just in terms of how easy it is to use because it takes time to run the data through it. If you built that full flow and you just want to run it once and you're happy with it taking half an hour, then I think it'd be perfectly fine. It is, I think, now in release that you can actually run workflows in the browser. So just like you can have that Explorer functionality and build visualizations in the browser, Tableau Prep can now also be run in the browser. However, I think this is a creator feature only. So it's would be able to be run on data sets that you can kind of upload into your browser and then actually build a prep workflow in your browser. So effectively, it means you wouldn't have to have the desktop software and you can run Tableau Prep anywhere, kind of on the go. Important thing to note: if you want to automate these flows and you want to have a kind of hands-off, scheduled workflow running kind of every day, every couple of hours, that is an additional license cost with the data management add-on. We are doing another session in a couple of weeks looking at Tableau's data management add-on. So if that's something that you're really interested in, there's another session on that in a couple of weeks. Over to Alteryx. So I think one of its key strengths here, on top of it being a very good analytical tool, is its ability to connect to practically anything. There's a very long list with the Tableau data sets, but if it's something in an API or if it's something on the web, it's going to take a bit more development to connect to those sort of data sets. There's not an inherent tool in Tableau that allows you to do that. Alteryx does have that tool. It has a download tool. You can put in any URL endpoint and it will download data from that in whatever format that API is set up to do. Alteryx is very good for cleaning those sort of messy data, that parsing. It's a bit more visual in terms of the way that you build the flow diagram, the way that you annotate it. Tableau Prep at the moment doesn't have as kind of extensive annotation. You can't really organize the flows in that way. Alteryx can be set up very nicely for different error checking. Another key thing is that the way that Alteryx works and Tableau Prep actually is that it takes rows of data from the source and runs it in memory, which means it's quite fast at processing it. However, if you've got a database with a few 100 million rows, it might actually be more performant to run it on the database. And Alteryx allows you to do that with their InDB tools. Alteryx is widely used by the top 4 accountancies and a lot of worldwide banks that we kind of help support as well and train. And there's also included with it, as Vikesh showed, there's some really extensive spatial tools and predictive analytic tools as well. So if you're looking to do regression, understand kind of customer retention, those tools are available to kind of build out. And it uses R as the engine. And so you could actually script your own kind of R code and things like that. Again, automation requires an additional license. So worth noting that both softwares, if you want to put them on a schedule and run with kind of a hands-off approach, they both require an additional license to do that. And that's really because there's a huge amount of power associated with being able to do that, because effectively you're taking you know, a manual job away, and you're getting a lot of a cost saving by automating those workflows. So they both have a cost associated with that effective cost saving that you're going to get from that. So just to kind of look at the two products next to each other, Tableau Prep would be the cost of a creator. So it's $840 per individual user per year. So you get a user key with a creator license. And that comes with Tableau Desktop and access to Tableau Server or Tableau Online. If you're familiar with Tableau Desktop and you know that you've got some data sets that need a bit of cleaning, need combining, need more than what you'd be able to do in Tableau Desktop, I'd definitely recommend having a look at Tableau Prep. It's very intuitive. It has similar kind of visual cues of grouping, adding calculations. And I'd say it's probably best for processing kind of local size data sources, those sort of things. Although you can extract things from databases very easily, but it depends on the scale. Alteryx is $4,986 per user per year. And that's due to its kind of strengths, you know, its ability to connect to anything, its ability to process large sets of data, running queries on the database, and it also includes some really advanced analytics as well. Okay, I think that's about it with those sections. So I'm just going to kind of leave it for a Q&A at the moment. So if you've got any questions, please put them in the chat and I'll do my best at answering them. I did actually see one earlier. Let me just see how I actually see this. There's a question about actually inputting data from a PDF into Alteryx. And this is a good kind of opportunity to highlight the community that both Tableau and Alteryx have. Alteryx's community is really good at finding kind of useful articles, how to use the tools, a lot of self-learning, some kind of challenges that you can do. So it's a really active community that you'll be able to kind of get an answer to any of your questions, really. And this looks like it's a pretty new tool. A colleague of ours has created a macro as well that's on the public gallery, but there is actually now a PDF input tool, and you can use that to input PDFs. One thing to note is the data is never going to be perfect out of the PDF. It depends on the quality of that original kind of file. But then you might need to do a couple of parsing steps. But once you've done that, you can just keep repeating that as well. So worth just having a look at Alteryx's community and Alteryx documentation for any of those sort of things. Let's have a look. Okay, so a question specifically about the automation, Alteryx's automation. So there's a couple of different options to that. And that's because it depends on the scale that you're kind of going for and what you're actually going to be running and how important those tasks are. So there's two ways of doing the scheduling. So there's a desktop scheduler that you have to run with a Alteryx Designer license on a actual PC machine. So it has to be on a physical laptop, a physical machine. And that license is about the same cost. So it's a little bit more. I think it's about $5,500 per user per year. And that allows you to run scheduled workflows on a desktop machine. If you're thinking of taking it a bit further, then there's a server product that we're going to actually cover in next week's session. So next week's session is going to be all about automation. And so we're going to go into the details and the costs of specifically Alteryx automation is next week. Tableau automation's in a couple of weeks. Next week is Alteryx automation. And so what that allows you to do is have a place to host workflows, host macros, share and collaborate on what you've built. And also, of course, schedule and automate any of those workflows and manage and govern that in a central location. So I'll just leave this slide up here and see if there's any other kind of questions coming in as well. So as I said, next week will be automating data processes with Alteryx. And after that, automating data processes with Tableau. And then lastly, to kind of finish this series, we've got a section that's specifically about data science. Are there any further questions?
We have got another question, Phil. So question is, how many people need to use data prep? So do you need to buy a license for everyone?
Yeah, that's a great question, kind of thinking about the size of the team and whose role is it to be doing that. And it can be done in a few different ways. I think it depends how you want to manage that and what kind of streams you have. But effectively, the way that the licensing works is it's a per user license. So only one person can use that license at a time. So these are annual costs per user. And I think the kind of questions you need to ask about who needs to do this is, I suppose it's kind of down to the capability of the people who is usually doing this sort of process themselves, who are the people that are actually already trying to combine different data sets and trying to clean up data themselves with that sort of process. And then kind of within that, what's the most important data streams that are coming in? Is it something that one person, one or two people could have that kind of knowledge, or is there kind of nuances in the data that only individuals themselves would understand because they're closer to that information, they're closer to that data? And then it makes sense to kind of give everybody access. So if they're people that they understand certain facets about the data, they understand the quality of it, they know how to do all those checks, it makes sense for them to be able to actually do their own preparation. If it's something that's a bit more investigative or exploring new data sets, then certain power users can do that. So I know that Alteryx has been used in a lot of senses as a kind of prototyping tool to be able to quickly get a data set prepared, quickly get an answer to a certain business question. And then it can kind of that process can be taken to something where it's actually productionized in some other solution. So there's a few different ways of working, and it's kind of what do you think fits best with the user that you have. But I think if you had everyone in the team using it, you'd be a lot more efficient, and you'd avoid any sort of bottlenecks. So any bottlenecks of somebody having to process that data or keeping getting requests. So can I get this new data? Can I get this new data? If there's that sort of scenario, the best way to avoid that is to actually give everybody access to these software.
Great, thanks. And I guess a follow-on question from that really would be that obviously you laid out all the benefits and things like that. How long would it take for someone to learn these data prep skills in Tableau Prep or Alteryx?
Yeah, so there's a lot of kind of online resources. So, as most things these days, you can kind of learn a lot of things by Googling it. So as you're kind of getting stuck in and kind of finding issues, that's the easiest way to learn. Another thing to note is that we run free training sessions every Thursday afternoon. So if there's anyone in your teams that you think are interested in this or you want to try it out yourself, every Thursday afternoon at 3 p.m. we have a free training session, and they cover all sorts of different topics from kind of beginner Tableau and beginner Alteryx all the way through to kind of creating advanced charts in Tableau Prep and some of the different tools that you can use in Alteryx as well. So we've got a lot of kind of content that should get you up and running. But I'd say to get a team to the stage where they can really control and understand their data and start taking, getting rid of that time wastage in their manual processes, it should be able to get to that stage in a couple of months if they're using the tool quite a lot. I've seen teams get up to speed in a month with kind of weekly training sessions that we've hosted. So if that's something that you're thinking and you really want to kind of change the way you're working, we can help facilitate upskilling and training specific topics. Because as you saw with Alteryx, there's quite a large set of different tools. And so it can help to actually have a specific session with some of those tools, because it's going to be a process that you're doing a lot with your data. It could be something like fuzzy matching, for example. So having a specific training on how to use those tools and what are the kind of pitfalls. So yeah, I'd say it should be a month or so, a couple of months if you're using it quite regularly. And then there's lots of free resources and training that are available. So worth including yourself in that.
Great, thank you. I think that's all the questions that we have for now.
Super. Well, thank you very much for attending this session. I hope it's given you a bit of insight into data preparation, understanding the two of the couple of solutions that we've got. And if there's anything there that you kind of want to know more about, or if there's something that you want to know more about, just please let me know. Just to kind of highlight the next sessions as well. If you think automation is something that you're interested in, if that's something that you want to know more about, there's some sessions coming in the following weeks about those specific topics. But yeah, if there's nothing else, I think we can end it there. And thanks for the time today. Thanks,
Phil. As Phil mentioned, just get in touch if you do have any questions, and we hope to see you again at some of our future events. Thanks, everybody.